it's Kristen, and this is my 2024 wrap up. So, the total amount of books I read within the year was 54, which I'm happy with. So, that's good. The total amount of new books I read, so anything that just wasn't a reread, doesn't mean like new, brand new book, just new to me. Anything, like I said, that wasn't a reread, was 52, which again, I'm happy with. I like to be reading new things. And then I had 2 rereads. The first book that I read in the year was This Winter by Alice Oseman. This is in her like Heartstopper universe with Nick and Charlie, and it's just like what happens over the Christmas holidays one year. And the last book I read in the year was Jane Austen's Christmas, The Festive Season in Georgian England, which is a non-fiction just about like Christmas traditions at that time and what people would have been doing at Christmas time in the time that Jane Austen was living. So I thought that was quite fun. I started and ended the year with like Christmas, New Year's books. Fun. My highest rated book of the year was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is about a woman called Evelyn Hugo, who's this big actress star, and she, as an old woman, decides to tell her life story and the 7 husbands that sort of shaped her life, were involved in her life at different points, and like who the actual love of her life was. So we go from her being an old woman telling the story to her in the past when these things were happening, and we get that narrative. I really liked this one. I am really into like acting, drama, theatre, movies anyway, so like old Hollywood stories, very interesting to me. I quite like a sort of interview style, someone's writing a memoir of someone else, biography kind of narrative. And this, I think, had some good like twists or plot hooks in it. I liked Evelyn Hugo as a character. She's not a likable character, but I think she's a very interesting, complicated, complex character. And I, was really interested in her story. So this one was like a total win for me. Read it towards the beginning of the year, gave it 5 stars. It was the first 5-star book I've read in such a long time. I was so happy when I was reading it, and I was just like, I think this might be a 5-star book. And yeah, great. Then my lowest rated book was The House We Grew Up In by Lisa Jewell. This I gave 2 stars, but it was like a low 2-star. This is about a family who something happened one like Easter weekend in the past, and then we follow them throughout the years, mainly flitting between 2 timelines similar to this, where we see them as like adults in their 30s, 40s, I think, and then we flip back to them as children, then them as teenagers, and them as like older teenagers, early 20s, late 20s, until we get up to the present day. And it's just learning about their lives and like what happened that Easter weekend and how that affected them as individual people and as like a family unit. This one, I think the cover really gives like mystery thriller vibes, and the back, the synopsis, I think suggests mystery thriller vibes, and then I really don't think it is. Like, there's slight mystery in what happened, but then I think you learn a lot of what happened earlier on, and I was always waiting for like maybe some sort of twist, some sort of reveal, but I don't know that there is anything like surprising in this necessarily. And I really think it is like pitched as a mystery thriller, and I don't think it is. And I think perhaps if it was marketed, if it was, you know, packaged differently, perhaps I wouldn't have been so disappointed. But also, I just felt like none of the characters were likable, and that's not to say that like I have to like a character, because I don't think Evelyn Hugo is likable, but I was so invested in her story. Whereas I don't think many of the characters, if any, were likable in here, and I also wasn't like rooting with any of them particularly, and it was just all very very sad. It was just like one thing after another of like depressing stuff without there being like, yeah, an interesting like twist hook to it. It was just like, oh, a death, oh, an affair, oh, a divorce. I can't even fully remember what's in here. Oh, you've like left your family. Oh, there's this weird relationship. And it was just like so messy and I didn't like it. But I didn't think I would. Anyway, I read it for a readathon, and the prompt was literally like, pick up a book you're not sure you'll like. And I wasn't sure I'd like this because I thought it sounded a bit generic and basic as a mystery thriller, and then it turned out to be sort of generic and basic without even having the mystery thriller element. So I didn't like that, but I'm not surprised I didn't like it, you know? So my average rating throughout the year of like all the books I read was a 3.31, which I'm not happy with. I sort of knew it would be in the 3 realm, like 3 point something, because I find I rate a lot of books 3-star because I can like a book and enjoy a book, but it's just not quite like a new favorite or a new like really enjoyed it, so it gets 3 stars. And then I can read a book that I don't particularly like, but I appreciate how well it's written maybe, or I appreciate what the author was trying to do, and so I don't necessarily want to give it 2 stars, so I give it 3 stars. My 3-star ratings are like wild, really, because yeah, a 3-star can be a good book that I think is good in terms of how it's written, structure, content, blah, but I just didn't really have that good of a time with it. 3 stars. Book I really enjoyed, but there was just a few niggly things wrong with it, so it doesn't quite get a 4 star, so it gets a 3 star. So my 3-star rating really encompasses quite a lot, but a 3.31 is very depressing to me. I really wish that number was higher. So then my shortest book I read this year, if we're going with like my actually shortest, it was a reread of A Die Hard Christmas. This is just a picture book that is the plot of the movie Die Hard. My sister got it for me a few years ago. I find it very funny. Great illustrations. It's all told in like rhymes for like 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and I just think it's really fun. I often reread it at Christmas time because I think it's funny, and my dad had never read it, so like I read it to my dad, which I thought was very funny. So this was actually the shortest book I read, but if we're going for something that's not a reread and is not just a picture book, then the shortest book was This Winter by Alice Oseman. This was, if you like take out the whole back bit, which is actually just an extract from Solitaire, which is another book, it's just over 100 pages, this one. So yes, that was my shortest book. And then my longest book was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This one is, let me check, if we don't include the glossary, it's 471 pages. This is a story of the Indian Ocean's most notorious female pirates. I really like this one. It was fun fantasy set at sea and on islands and things like that. Very magical, adventurous. Something I've not read like from that genre in a while, or not like delved into a fantasy like this in a long time, and it took me a little bit to get into it, but once I was into it, I had such a good time, and I'm really looking forward to the sequels, the rest of the series. Yeah, really enjoyed this one, and like feel good getting through a big book. It's like an achievement. So yeah, very much enjoyed that. And then my most read author this year, the author I've read the most books from, was Sarah MacLean. And that makes sense because I read the Bare Knuckle Bastards trilogy. So I don't remember reading like multiple books from other authors this year, but potentially I did, but it was only 2 at the most. And then, yeah, Sarah MacLean, I read 3 books. This was towards the end of the year. I will have a reading series video coming out about these books. But yeah, 3 books by Sarah MacLean, and I would read more from her. She's a historical romance writer, and I, yeah, had a good time with this trilogy. Not the best historical romance I've ever read, but like enjoyable, fun, a little bit silly at times, but like just a good time. So that is it in terms of stats and like telling you my tops and bottoms and that kind of thing. Now we're going to go into my goals, looking back at my goals I had for this year and how I did on them. Spoiler alert, not great. So my first goal was to read more books than I acquire. So to be taking down my TBR number rather than bringing it up. Last year I did terribly at this, like absolutely awfully. I hauled so many books, way more books than I read. This year, better. I read 31 physical books from my TBR. From my physical TBR, I read 31 books. So the other 20 whatever books were borrowed or e-reader or audiobook. So 31 books from my physical TBR got read. I hauled 36 physical books. So that's 5 books more that I hauled than what I read. But that for me is really good, considering I think the previous year I like hauled 80 something books and I physically read like 20 or 30. So we're making progress. We're making progress. Then my next goal was to read the books I'd pre-ordered within 3 months of receiving them. So at the end of 2023, I had pre-ordered a certain amount of books and they were coming throughout the year, and I just wanted to have read them within 3 months of receiving them. I think I read The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi within 3 months of getting it, but that was the only one. All of the others are still on my TBR. So I did not achieve that goal. I'm very disappointed in myself, but I really want to get to all those books this year. My next goal was to read 50 books. I did it. I did that. I definitely did that. I went over that. I didn't just hit 50, I did 54. Fantastic. I wanted to finish reading the books from 2023 that my sister and her friend had picked for me to do in a 12 in 12 challenge, where you read 12 books in the 12 months. And in 2023, I read 2 of the books off that list. And I was like, I'm not going to make a new list. I'm just going to carry over the 10 other books into 2024 and see if I can read them in that year. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and no other book from that list. I think my problem is with that list, they picked some books that I am excited about and I really have no excuse to have not got round to. And then other books they picked, like I do want to read eventually and I know I should read, but I'm not actually that fussed about it. My sister picked books that she knew would like challenge me to pick them up, and she and her friend picked books that they'd read and enjoyed, or books that they wanted to read, so they wanted me to get to it so they could borrow those books. But some of them are just ones that I wasn't ever like raring to pick up, so they didn't get read, and I think I'm just gonna scrap that list. I might like have it to myself personally so I can finally cross everything off, but it's not one that I'm gonna carry forward as a goal in 2025. So yeah, of that 12 and 12 challenge, over 2 years I read 3 of those books. Then we had the goal of finishing some series. And I guess I sort of did that with the Bare Knuckle Bastard series, although this wasn't like finishing a series, this was starting and finishing a series within the year. It wasn't finishing off anything I'd previously started in another year, but I'm still counting it. And I did carry on with some series. I read Rebel Spring, which is the sequel to Fallen Kingdoms, which is a fantasy series I started a few years ago and had just never carried on with. That's by Morgan Rhodes. I read The Man Who Died Twice, which is the sequel to The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, a little cozy sort of mystery crime series that I think I read the first book either the year before or the year before that. But I read that and it was like very quick to get through, so I carried on with those two at least. I'm trying to think of anything else perhaps I carried on with, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I started a lot of series like The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. I read Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which is the first book in a new series, and a couple of the sequels, or a sequel and a prequel, are out, which I will continue on with. But I didn't finish any series. But again, I think this is a goal that as long as I'm continuing with series, I'm not going to stress too much anymore about finishing them. So that's fine. Another goal was to read more nonfiction already on my TBR shelves, because in previous years I'd read nonfiction, but I'd been listening to a lot of it on audio, or I'd got it from the library or things like that, and I wanted to read more of the nonfiction already on my shelves, because I actually have quite a lot of nonfiction on my shelves I've just not been getting around to. I read 5 nonfiction books in the whole year. 2 were audiobooks. One of them was a borrowed book from my mum, the Jane Austen Christmas, and 2 were physically mine from my TBR. And I'd hoped to do better than that, but I think that's like okay. I like reading nonfiction. I'm not a huge nonfiction reader. I do quite like listening to nonfiction on audiobooks, so I'm not gonna get like too het up about it. But it is a goal I think I will continue on. I do want to read more of the nonfiction from my shelves before it gets too out of control. Then my goal was to read more classics. I read 2 classics, which isn't great, and one of them was for a book club that I run for work, The Wolves of Willoughby Chase, which I think was written maybe like in the 50s, so it's not like a modern classic, but it's more modern than a book from 1800s, you know. And then the other one was Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, and I didn't really like Treasure Island. Dare I say it, I did not have fun with that book. Yeah, so the classics I did read, I didn't love. I did intend to pick up more classics. I wanted to read Cranford and just never got around to it, and I wanted to read Jane Eyre and I never got around to it. So that again is probably a goal I will want to carry forward. Not great, but we persevere. Then my next goal was to read the books on my TBR that were 10 years old, like they'd been on my TBR for 10 years. I remember getting them when I was at university. Those books. I read Rebel Spring by Morgan Rhodes, the fantasy book in the Fallen Kingdoms series. That had been on my TBR for actually longer than Fallen Kingdoms was, because I bought Rebel Spring thinking it was the first book in the series. It wasn't, it's the second book in the series. So then I had to buy Fallen Kingdoms. So that had been on my TBR for 10 years and I finally read it. The other books that had been on my TBR for 10 years, I did not read. I did not. I fully intended to, and then I just wasn't in the mood to read them, or they were like big books and we were towards the end of the year and I didn't really want to read like a massive book getting into the last month of the year. So I intend to read them this year because I think over 10 years on my TBR is just ridiculous. And now that we're in 2025, there are books that I got in 2015 that are now 10 years old. So now I have books that are 11 years old and 10 years old on my TBR. So those, they need to get off there. They need to get off there. But the only way to do that is for me to just fucking read them. So I need to do that. I need to do that. Then getting away from like book reading goals and more into like bookish goals. I wanted to be more timely with editing and uploading videos on this channel. I think I was off to a strong start last year, better than I am this year. I had like my goals, my wrap up, just like sort of beginning of the year videos going out quite consistently in January and February. I think things were going out fairly consistently. Then I had a lot of tech problems with my phone and my laptop and like the connectors and cables and things I had. So I wasn't able to like edit and upload things or even record things in like the timely manner that I wanted. So things got a bit away from me. There were some months that actually I did manage to get back on top of filming and editing, and so there were a few months where I had like a good upload schedule, or I was uploading like a video a week, and then things got away from me again. Then I bought myself a new camera towards the end of the year, but I have had some issues with that. I need to like fully sit down and work out the issues I'm having with it and if they're fixable and stuff like that. So there were some months that were really good in terms of editing and uploading and getting like readathon videos out on time, or just like themed videos that I specifically wanted to do in like a certain month or whatever. And then others just didn't work out. So yeah, but I'm not gonna get too stressed about it, because that's when I think I stop enjoying reading so much or like making videos, is when I'm going, shit, I've got to get this up by this day, but then that means pushing that video back, and then that video is not like coming in the summer when I wanted it to come, and then it's going up late, and then it stressed me out and I was like overwhelmed. So I think this year I need to be more chill about my reading and potentially not focus on like, this has to go up in spring, this has to go up in summer, this has to go up in this time period or anything like that, and just maybe film more videos that can go up like any time of the year, and it's not the end of the world if it goes up not in the week or the month that I'd intended. So, you know, things happen, outside factors happen. I could have got things up in a more timely fashion if I hadn't had like issues with my laptop and my phone and stuff like that. It would have got done, but because I had those issues and I couldn't immediately fix them, things just had to get pushed back. So I'm not going to get mad if it's something outside of my control. And then finally, my last goal was to actually continue writing the book that I wrote during lockdown. I did NaNoWriMo in 2020 and actually won it. I'd previously done NaNoWriMo and never actually hit the 50,000 words, but I did with this book that I was writing. And then I wrote like a little bit extra to it in 2021. And then I don't think I wrote anything in 2022. In 2023, my goal was to finish it. I did not. I can't remember if I even added to it. So then this year I was like, I don't need to finish it. I just need to continue writing it. I'm not going to get stressed. I had the best of intentions. I kept thinking, I should write. Like, I'm in the mood to write. I should write. And then I just didn't. And I didn't continue writing it. And now I feel like it's got away from me a bit, that story. Because now, this year, come November, it will have been 5 years since I started writing it. So I really feel like I need to go back and really revisit everything I've written so far and see if I can continue. But yeah, I didn't do that goal. So most of the goals on here I did not achieve, or I partially achieved by doing like 1 or 2 things. The only goal I fully achieved was to read 50 books. Everything else was almost achieved, or I did 1 or 2 things to contribute towards achieving it, or I just fully did not do. So I think I need to reevaluate how I set my goals, set myself more achievable goals, because I think it's good to set some goals that are like, maybe I can achieve that if I push myself, because it gives me motivation. But I also think it's important to set myself goals that like I know I can achieve, or if I put just a little bit of effort in, I can absolutely achieve it. And just work my way through goals that way, so that I can immediately like definitely have some things ticked off. Although saying that, a lot of these goals I thought were fully achievable and I would manage to do them, and then I just didn't. Because like, actually continue writing the book I was working on, all I would have had to do is do like 1 or 2 writing sessions and added some words to that document, and I could go, yeah, I continued writing it. Instead I just did nothing. So if that gives you any indication of who I am as a person, a procrastinator, someone who loves a project, loves planning a project, but needs a real kick up the arse to actually do the damn thing. Yeah. Anyway, that is my 2024 wrap up. Those were my stats, my faves and least faves, my sort of notable books. I debated doing like a whole video about my favourites and least favourites, not just like my top book and my bottom book, but generally like all my 5 and 4 stars, and then like my 2 stars, and then anything in between that was like maybe my disappointing books. I debated doing that. I'm not entirely sure. If you'd like to see that video, let me know, and I guess I could film that. And we also got how I did on my goals towards the end there, which, as I said, not brilliant. So my next video should be my 2025 goals, so you can see what goals I've carried over, what goals I just completely got rid of, and what new goals I have for myself this year. So I hope you will watch that video. Let me know what your favourite, least favourite book was down below. Let me know how many books you read overall in 2024. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!